Welcome to 12 Gauge Investigative.
In the shadows where the truth hides deep, echoes of the lost and the secrets they keep. Cold cases burn in the back of your mind. We dig through the dark, one clue at a time. This ain't fiction, this is blood, this is truth. 12 Gauge Investigative, justice uncaged. We ask the questions they're too scared to say, shining a light where the guilty pray. From killers to whispers, we won't look away.
Happy Saturday, everybody. My name is 12 Gauge. Welcome to my channel, 12 Gauge Investigative. This morning, I thought I'd hop on here and talk a little bit of Idaho since I didn't do it last night because there was so much going on. But one of the big things that's been dropping lately is about this corrections officer and being subpoenaed to testify once the trial gets here. We have those questions. What did the corrections officer know? What did he hear? What was he able to testify to once the trial gets here? First of all, I'd like to welcome everybody that's in the chat. Thank you so much for starting your day off with me. It means a lot. Thank you so much for being here. You know, this corrections officer could hold the key to a lot of things, especially if there was a lot of valuable information released by BK without even realizing that, you know, he was releasing this type of information that could later be used against them. Because we don't know if he was under the influence. We don't know if he was high. We don't know if any of this when he was arrested. So, you know, yeah, that handle stuff is not cool. I think what you need to do is go into your YouTube, and where it says nicknamed or handle or whatever, go ahead and put the name that you use to chat with. I need to do the same thing. Let me see if it does it. Let me pull up YouTube. That way I can show you guys how to do it. And especially if it does it, everybody can go in and do that right quick. "12 Gauge Investigative." Okay. So now we're at the channel. So what you do is you customize channel. You go to home. You go right here where it says handle. Maybe this is where people are talking about. 12 Gauge. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. Let me see if this works. Okay, let me type something now. Yes, I can't use the 12 because it's an unsupported character. So y'all can go in there and just put your name, your chat name. Like I put 12 gauge right there. Just go in there and or like Rondi has her name all together. You can just, if your real name is on there, go ahead and just go take that off and just put your chat name. See, like Texas did his also. So yeah, I don't like it either. I don't know why they did that, but hopefully they change it back. Welcome, those of you that are coming in. I hate when YouTube does that. They make you all big and everything. So if y'all could go in there and change that, if y'all wanna, if you don't want your name to be broadcast, go in there and put your handle that you chat with. Like yours would be Common Sense, so it would be at Common Sense. The only thing, it's not going to be there's not going to be a space, so people are going to have to read it. You know what I mean? See, because there's certain people I don't know, like this person CCBCEBS. Welcome. So let's get on with the show. Let's see what the corrections officer had to say. And this is being broadcast under fair use. Everything I'm discussing is for educational value. Nothing more, nothing less. So here we go.
Detectives arrested 28-year-old Brian Christopher Kohlberger on a warrant for murder of Ethan, Zena, Madison, and Kaylee.
He was stalking them. He was hunting them.
You could tell there was something off about him.
A quadruple homicide in Moscow, Idaho. It's just unheard of.
This is our home. This is our university. This is our community.
These murders have shaken our community, and no arrest will ever bring back these young students.
This was a violation of everything.
We are just about 2 months away from the start of Brian Kohlberger's quadruple murder trial. And as the countdown continues, new court documents are revealing a growing witness list. A total of 7 people are now set to appear in court in the coming weeks in Pennsylvania to determine whether they should have to testify during the trial. That group includes a jail guard from the facility that Kohlberger was held in before he was extradited to Idaho. Last week, we heard about this little DoorDash driver body cam as a potential witness. She delivered food to one of the victims on the night of the murder, said she saw Kohlberger at the crime scene. She'll be a big witness. She was arrested for a DUI. And, some people say, well, I know the sheriff. She says, I'm a witness in Kohlberger's case. Take a listen.
Brian?
Yep, I feel all the girls over in Moscow.
You have to testify in which murder? Oh.
All right, so we're asking.
So before we go any further, I want y'all's opinion in the chat. Do you really believe that her getting that DW or that DUI, it wasn't even a DWI, so we can't say DWI because DWI, driving under the influence, DUI, driving on, it's like driving impaired under a different substance. Driving under impairment, I think that's what they call it. Different states have different type of verbiage for that. But let me ask you guys in the chat: do you believe that, especially if that was her only charge, it was a misdemeanor, I'm sure. So do you believe that that misdemeanor is going to be enough to be a character assassination for her in the trial? Do you believe that the jury will actually have anything negative to say about the DUI? Let me hear your thoughts. I know that there's a little bit of time delay, so I'll wait for you guys to answer me. But I'd like to hear what you got to say about it because it's been a hot topic. Leslie said, yeah, if they play the videos. Well, I mean, she didn't have anything in her, I mean, she didn't fail any sobriety test. So what else do they have? You know, she passed the sobriety test as far as I can tell. Do you think that the jury will more than likely frown upon this situation? I think they will try for sure, not alcohol. I don't think the jury will weigh a whole lot on the video once the whole picture gets pointed out about her. But she had meth in the truck. Well, I'm going to ask you, how do we know that? That she wasn't arrested for methamphetamines as far as I remember. You get what I'm saying? I mean, if she was under the influence, it's Class C misdemeanor. So, you know, it's nothing, it's not a felony. You know, it's on camera. Okay, I'll have to go back and look at that camera footage then. I haven't gone and looked at the camera footage because to me, that just, you know, it's like, who's to say that was even her methamphetamine? You get what I'm saying? And I'm not trying to defend her one bit. I'm not trying to defend her one bit. I'm just asking these questions that many people don't ask. People are quick to judge and crucify you when it meets their narrative, but they don't give the grace when it doesn't. You get what I'm saying? So I'm going to have to go look at that. And we'll try to make a mess of it. Maddie Mogan was driving a silver Jeep Subaru SUV in another traffic stop. Or Molly, that didn't appear on any of the LL videos. Okay. If she had been caught with methamphetamine, she would have been charged. It is all documented on camera. I can't just throw something out like that. My first two comments were blocked. Who blocked them? The boyfriend truck, it says to her, don't let them search the truck. There's meth in it. You can hear it. But she was less anxious and traumatized back then. I think the prosecution will prepare the rebuttal, and she isn't on trial. That's true. That's the big point right there. She's not on trial. She's not on trial. So the fact that she may have broken the law, that still does not negate the fact that she saw Brian, if she did, at the crime scene. People can say anything they want to say. There was no testimony that night that she failed a drug test, that she got pulled over for anything. So you can't assume that she was under the influence the night of the murder. You can. I mean, the defense can try. They can try and assume that, you know, she was under the influence these nights. What makes it seem she wouldn't be under the influence the night of the murders. I get that. But I don't believe that that'll stick. I mean, so are you talking about which pullover out there? There's a few of them. Well, I'm talking about the pullover that she was just taken into custody right there for the DUI. I'm not talking about all those other ones. I know there's probably 3 or 4 out there that are, different ones, but all that has nothing to do with the murders. All it's trying to do on YouTube is paint a picture. Well, this is a person who gets pulled over a lot. On only one of those videos does she look impaired, and that's the one that she got the DUI under. The one that she hit the individual in the Walmart parking lot, she waited around and called in as well on herself. So if you were under the influence of drugs or anything like that, would you really wait around and call in on yourself? I don't believe so. But stranger things have happened. You know what I mean? Tell me what more you believe. Leslie believes that it will be used against her, that the trial jury will indeed use these camera images as a way to discredit her. Does anybody else believe that that is true? Does anybody else believe that potentially in the trial, these other traffic stops will be used against her as a character buildup? She isn't on trial, but at the same time, they try to discredit you any way they can. Like I said at one point, it's like a prostitute who witnesses a murder. All of a sudden, the prostitute has bad eyesight. All of a sudden, the prostitute doesn't know her colors or is incapable of seeing further than a couple feet in front of her face. It just to discredit, You say only because, but our world is by first impressions or what people remember. Understand that, but that was when? 2022, 2024? That was 2 years after the murder. 2 years after the murders. I don't think her testimony is important as people think. For sure not her life story. She saw him outside, just another nail in the coffin. I believe that too. I think she will be asked what she saw and what else is there. That's what she's taking the stand for. You're exactly right. All these conspiracy channels are absolutely criminal, in my opinion, for what they have done to innocent people. It's kind of like someone who reads electric meters for a living, but they are delinquent on their electric bill. Yeah. Anne is going to have a field day with her. You sound like a lot of other channels right now, Leslie. I respect your comments, but I don't believe so. I don't believe that Anne is going to be the savior that everybody's looking for. I don't believe that Anne's going to bring a defense that's going to be worthy of anything that she hasn't brought already. If she was that great at doing what she does, and I'm not saying that she's not good in other areas, but if she was that great at defending her client, we wouldn't be at this point with all the things that have been let in for the potential trial, if that makes sense. And she doesn't have to do anything. Anne doesn't. If the prosecution brings her on as a witness, which they will, the defense bringing up her driving record will be outside of the scope. Thank you for that. Because the prosecution's the one who has the burden of proof. The defense doesn't have anything. I highly doubt that Ann Taylor is going to have a field day with anyone during this trial. I don't either. I didn't say that. I don't like Ann. I think she's lazy and doesn't really believe this innocent. He's innocent. I believe that, the prosecution is going to have the burden of proof. And when they call on witnesses, of course, the defense is going to be able to cross-examine. So they're going to be able to cross-examine the testimony regarding the crime, not the testimony about their life history. Their life history if anything, she's just going to ask her, how long have you been door dashing? Were you door dashing the night of the crime? How many other stop did you have before 11/22? When was this order put in? Blah, blah, blah. Stuff like that, to paint the picture that this was actually the DoorDash driver in front of the jury. Nothing more, nothing less. I mean, as far as the DUI and all that, that doesn't matter. I mean, there's people that are in prison for murder, rape, arson, all this other stuff, that hear certain things from people that are potential, that have other crimes pending, that get called to trial to testify against them. So that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the lady's past. Here we go.
That to me is just off the wall, but we know about her now because she wasn't in the initial affidavit, probable cause affidavit, but she'll be testifying. How are the new witnesses going to affect Kohberger's trial? Let's talk about it here to discuss. Criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor Franz Borchardt still with us, and a criminologist and professor at St. Thomas University, Dr. Debbie Goodman here. I want to start with this DoorDash driver. So we didn't know about her until this DUI arrest, and then the body camera comes out and she blurts it out. Obviously, people blurt stuff out in that situation. But how important is she if she can identify the Kohberger? Because right now we were under the impression it was just this bushy eyebrow description from a roommate. If you've got a more succinct description, that's huge, is it not?
I mean, and that's a good thought, and that's what people aren't really understanding. If you got a description of an individual with bushy eyebrows in the house, let's see, the DoorDash driver would have seen him first. So if she said he had bushy eyebrows, curly hair, white dude, skinny looking, or she just saw the eyebrows. And then later on, you have an individual inside the house give you a description of an individual with bushy eyebrows. How can two bushy eyebrow people be in the same vicinity within minutes? You get what I'm saying? It's not plausible. It really isn't. You're not going to be able to have that situation happen, because at 3:57, 3:58, that time frame, that's when she's arriving probably. Dropped the DoorDash off at 3:59. Brian's cruising around there at 3:50, 3:56, I think, or 57. I get those time frames all confused, but he's around there at the same time. So I've done a video on this, so if you go back and watch, you can see exactly what I'm talking about. So she's going to be able to see him first. She was the first eyewitness. And I know people get stuck on the document that says Dylan was the only living eyewitness to this crime. Well, the DoorDash driver didn't see the crime. She was outside the home. So how could she have seen or heard the crime? It only makes sense. Dylan was in the home where the crime was being taken place. So when people take stuff like that out of context, it's easy to make it look like reasonable doubt. So let's continue on.
Yes. Would you like me to respond?
Yes, Debbie, sorry.
Oh, thank you so much. Good morning. And how huge is it? I think it's colossal, Ted. I really do. At the moment, you mentioned Dylan, and I don't regard her necessarily as an eyewitness who could directly point out in court and say, that's the guy I saw, Brian Kohberger. She should not be pressured to do that. What she will say, as you mentioned, is the description of the bushy eyebrows and the face covering. Now we move to the 44-year-old DoorDash driver going by the initials MM. I think it's huge, Ted, for two reasons. One of which is she could literally be the eyewitness on this case. If we have an individual who can say that they saw Brian Kohberger at the time and place of these savage slaughters. And if she could say she saw his car, I think that's very significant. And the second issue is it would give us a really succinct and specific time frame of when these murders took place at the moment.
And that's true as well. You know, she would have been able to see that vehicle, right? I mean, like I was telling Nina last night because I was on her panel. I was telling her last night, you know, this DoorDash driver would have been the first person to identify that white Elantra. Because she would have been technically, other than the camera, been the first person to see it face to face. So they were onto that white Elantra within 24 hours. Within 24 hours of the crime. So all these individuals that say, I mean, I understand they didn't really have him on their radar till the 21st, but they were on to that white Elantra. They just didn't know who they belonged to. They were on to the physical description of the individual because the DoorDash driver would have given them that. Dylan would have given them the description. These descriptions match up, and there you go. That's another interesting point. Would there be any chance that the DoorDash driver could have it on cam? I don't know. I don't know if the DoorDash driver is actually, I mean, we don't know. I mean, she could have it on cam. I don't know if their camera faces outward or just faces inward, or if they even have camera. You know what I mean? I said quite a while ago that DoorDash driver and BK have crossed paths. Yeah, we've all really said that in the very beginning. We all said that there was a strong probability that the DoorDash driver would have seen Brian. Nobody really believed in that because it was never stated, so nobody wanted to go there. But think about that. This crime happened so quickly as the DoorDash driver was coming. How could she not have seen him? Either coming or going on one of the multiple turnarounds around the Queen Road apartments. Hey, Jeff. We knew there was something to considering it was under seal. Yeah. I mean, and that's interesting that she would have been the first person to really be able to give a description of the car, and possibly Brian. Of all the people in the world, God. So Xana, if this turns out to be true, if this DoorDash driver's eyewitness testimony turned out to be true, then Xana solved this crime for her 3 other roommates. Because without her ordering DoorDash, there would have never been an eyewitness delivering food that night. There wouldn't have been somebody seeing that car drive by. Nothing. And I know people don't want to believe that. I know they don't. They're going to fight it to the death. They're going to say that, you know, Ann Taylor this, Ann Taylor that. Well, how many saviors are you booking your money on? Because every one that people have stated, well, this person is going to knock everybody out of the park, and they're going to be the one to free Brian. Okay. So it's interesting to me that Xana ordered food and this lady delivered it.
Moment. We think the delivery of the food was at or near 4 a.m., but investigators think that the actual murders took place within the time frame of 4:07 and 4:21, so that 13 to 14 minute window of time can be solidified. So I am truly looking forward to hearing about what this woman saw and what she has to say.
Franz, you know, we found out about this woman because of the DUI.
That's a great question also, Texas. Who did he almost run over? I mean, And could this person be another eyewitness person that saw not only the white Elantra, but an individual that resembled someone in the vehicle with bushy eyebrows, curly looking hair? I mean, because I don't know about you, but if somebody's about to run me over, I'm going to take a good hard look at who's driving. I might not notice their license plate number, or what if this individual was mindful enough to capture their license plate number on a photo? You know? Yeah, especially at 4 a.m. I mean, that's an interesting thought. That person gets pushed to the. I mean, here you have potentially 3 people that saw this individual. Maybe not like we would sit here and have a face-to-face conversation, but how can 3 people not be clear on something that they see about this individual? That man should have shaved his eyebrows that night. He really should have.
Why? Are you expecting we're going to find out a lot more about the state's case once it begins? I mean, that probable cause affidavit was lengthy. You're thinking, oh, this is what they have, and they have a lot in there. But safe to say, there's maybe more that we have no idea about that the state's going to deliver during their case.
So the probable cause affidavit for the viewers doesn't normally include the kitchen sink. However, in a case of this nature, you generally publicly lead with your best evidence, right? Hey, there was this DNA sheath, knife sheath found at the scene, and there was a description that kind of fits him. So yeah, I do think that we're going to see some more witnesses and some more evidence, but I think we have, honestly, Ted, I think we have the best evidence is known evidence. Everything else is just going to reinforce that evidence. So, for example, the DoorDash witness, who didn't do the state any favors by getting a DWI, by the way, and by mouthing off about Brian, that's her words, first name. That witness isn't going to make or break the case, but that witness kind of reinforces the DNA, which is being challenged right now. So it's kind of like it's a net effect, a totality of circumstances. But I don't know that we're going to have a lot of surprises. Now, if we get to a death penalty phase, that might be some surprises, because if they convict him, then there's a penalty phase, and then that's when mitigation evidence and also aggravators come out. And that may be a lot of information that has nothing to do with the murder itself, but may have to do with why we either do or don't want to put him to death.
Yeah, and to that end, there is a witness list that has come up out of the state of Pennsylvania, where these individuals are being told that they should be prepared to come to Idaho. They're going to hash that out to figure out who exactly is coming, who isn't. And on the list, we've got like an advisor at the high school. That's Ann Parham. Correction officers, where Kohlberger was held initially there when he was taken into custody. And then, former professor, Marie Bolger, Jesse Harris, a former boxing coach. People that are setting up, Dr. Debbie Goodman, that eventual penalty phase, I would think, because they're talking about his character. On some level, him being portrayed as normal by these people. Oh, he was a great student. He was a great boxing participant. He was just a wonderful guy. That's scarier than he had a tough upbringing and a criminal record is on some levels. And if I'm on that jury.
That is so true. That's a great point, because, if you're going to be one of these witnesses and you're saying, well, Brian had great coordination, good hand-eye skill, all this, he was a great person, in class. He was very methodical, very articulate, very able to, know what he was talking about. He was very studious. Man, Do you see how that looks on the other side? It looks like, well, man, this person has every opportunity to be everything that we're trying to paint him not to be. Especially if there was indeed facial injuries on one of the victims. If there was indeed facial injuries on one of the victims that could be attributed to somebody punching that person, and you have your boxing coach sitting there saying, well, he was quick with his hands. He was, he had a good right hook, or he had a good, jab or whatever. I mean, it's kind of damning, right? And as far as his professor and everybody else talking about what type of person he was, I mean, most people are going to talk good about you in a professional setting. They're not going to talk about how creepy you are. They're not going to talk about how awkward you are. They're going to talk about how good of a person you were and how cordial and kind you were regarding the capacity in which they held their presence with you in. So that's interesting information that he just said. What do y'all think, Chad? Do you think that what he's saying as far as having positive comments about Kohberger would be more damning than the negative stuff? Because I believe it would be. Because they're trying to paint him as somebody that can't run a 6 mile or 6 minute mile or something. I don't know what. I get it. 6 miles and 6 miles and such time. They're trying to paint him as not having the coordination to be able to do this crime. They're trying to paint him as not being capable of having the strength to do this crime. So, yeah, 6 minute mile. So to be able to paint that picture that indeed he is capable, that is pretty damning in my opinion, but I want to know what y'all think. Tell me what y'all think about what this guy just said about the positive attributes. And it is true. Sometimes having people talk positively about you would be more than not having. Does anybody want to jump in there and give me their opinion on that? I know we do have a lag. So the chat is kind of still catching up, I guess. Rondi says, I agree with him. Anybody else? Anybody else believe that the positive attributes could be more of a detriment to his character than the negative ones? Let me know what you think.
And a member of the community, I don't know that that works for him.
Right, Ted. Very good points. But I think we would anticipate, without any real surprise or shock, that there will be individuals with whom this defendant interacted along the way who may have favorable things to say about him, just like people may have said favorable things somewhere along the way about a Ted Bundy, Dennis Rader, Jeffrey Dahmer. So I don't think that will come as a surprise, nor do I think whatever these individuals have to say about Bryan Kohberger, that is truly in the past. So we understand cases, we understand how they're organized, past, present, future. So we'll hear from them about the past. But more importantly, I believe, is the present. What did he do, and all the evidence that the prosecution has? And then, of course, moving forward, if he is indeed the killer of our 4 victims, then what will the penalty be?
Franz, for people that may have written this off like, oh, he's going down, they got the knife sheath, they have the DNA. He has a very legitimate team of defense attorneys, partly because this is a death penalty case. So the state is forced to defend him vigorously. And This could, this is not going to be a lay down and die scenario from this defense team, is it not?
So no, I expect a very thorough and aggressive defense. Capital lawyers generally are a top tier qualified attorneys. But now the other side of this, Ted, is capital defense attorneys, their sole job in that arena is to do what? To keep their client alive. And so sometimes while he is maintaining factual innocence, sometimes that means yielding to factual innocence because it's hard to pivot. If you've been saying all trial long, I didn't do it, and then you're convicted, and then you're going to turn around and ask a jury for a reason not to put you to death, it's hard to make that pivot, right? It's hard to say, I'm innocent, but these are the reasons you shouldn't put me to death. Because you're not taking accountability. You're not accepting any kind of responsibility for your actions. So it's a very delicate tightrope walking. But that said, I would expect an aggressive defense. And for example, that DoorDash witness is maybe the best witness the state has besides the DNA, but she just shot a giant hole in the defense's case with that DWI commentary, which has nothing to do with her witnessing, but has something now to do with the case.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you're right. The goal, you could tell it in the pretrial motions, that the goal is to keep him alive. They have used a lot of motions to try to get the death penalty off the table, even before going to trial. We'll see it all play out a couple months from now, and of course our cameras will be there, and we'll be covering that one soon enough.
Well, okay, they didn't mention nothing about the correctional officer. I just got clickbaited. Is that not something else right there? I just got clickbaited. Let me see if I can find something else. It's interesting how something happens and we all pay attention to it as if it's going to be the piece of the puzzle that set this individual free. But we so seldom forget to look at the individual that could obviously set him free. And that is the jury. The jury, whoever they pick on the jury is going to be the most important persons that they could have in this whole trial. Because they're the ones that are faced with the burden to decipher through all the arguments, all the evidence, all the scenarios, and put it all together in their head. Was this individual capable of doing this? Was this individual able, one that were driving around in a white Elantra? And it's not going to be like a checkoff list. It's not going to be a checkoff list where white Elantra, bushy eyebrows, 6 foot tall, thin build, none of that. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be deciphering the guilty mindset of an individual who would have committed these crimes. And I cannot stress that enough. I've been saying that for a long time. A long time. It's not going to be just about one dimension. They're going to paint a picture of an individual with a guilty mindset who's culpable and able to commit a crime like this, a quadruple homicide. All this outside the house stuff, it's circumstantial at best, but it still places him in the vicinity. All the phone pings, all the late night, early mornings, all that stuff, him coming back at 9 a.m., pinging at the residence to 9:21, all that is painting a timeline and a picture that it's hard to defend. I mean, because you're going to ask, he's not going on a stand, so the jury's going to have those questions without somebody answering them for him. The defense attorney is going to try to answer those questions probably in the opening arguments, but as far as anything else, You know, like, you don't think when the prosecution says, well, the individual's phone was captured by a tower pinging again at the morning of the murder from 9 a.m. to 9:21. The jury's not going to be asking those questions we ask. So what was he doing from 9 to 9:21 back around the residence? They can't speculate. They can't put their own scenarios in on it. They're going to have to go based on the evidence. And if there is none, you're going to have to go with your own analytical version and say, well, he said he wasn't around the house at all. But then these experts have shown the ability to show his phone pinging back at the residence, the same location that the other 22 times pinged. How do you explain that? Circumstantial at best, but at the same time, how do you explain that? How do you explain that your phone pinged at this certain area, but nobody's ever given an explanation for it? Well, you have fun, Common Sense. Thank you so much for being in here. Be careful with those fireworks and enjoy your time with your grandsons. We appreciate you being here. Have fun. You know, how are you going to explain that? You really can't. I think it was all in the planning. He knew there would be a lot of circumstantial BS, but with so much DNA in that house, but you left his DNA at the scene, no criminal mastermind. No, he wasn't. Go read the document, Chick Bait. It's all in there. You know, many people paint him as a mastermind, but they also fail to understand that he wasn't a criminal justice major until he went to get his doctorate. He was studying psychology, the mind, not criminology, not until his master's. So from his master's, those 2 years, and then he transferred to WSU to continue his doctorate. There was no mention of him studying criminal justice at those other places that I've heard of. It's all been psychology. So when it comes to him being a criminal mastermind, there's a reason he could have made all these mistakes. It's because he wasn't really versed in it. 2 years is 2 years. Doesn't make you an expert. Hell, I just spent 2 years of my life learning about criminal justice. Could I go out and commit a crime without making mistakes? No. Could I commit the perfect murder? No. And I heard an instructor at one of the colleges talking about it's almost impossible to commit the perfect murder because the emotional effect that goes into it and how you're tied to whenever you're actually committing the crime. The studious aspect of it, of learning how to catch a killer, is totally different. Even if you try to flip it around and say, well, I don't want to be caught, I'm going to use the information that I learned on how to catch a killer by not being caught. The emotional attachment still goes into that. So you still have propensity to be making these mistakes. I believe he made mistakes. He did. And we're going to hear about more mistakes that he made. If we don't hear about a lot more evidence, we're going to hear about mistakes that he made that we're able to pinpoint not only on him, but to be able to be having the opportunity to catch this man if he is indeed the killer of 1122 King Road. it's one thing to say, you can say, well, you know what? I can bake cookies better than anybody in the world. I make the best chocolate chip cookies and blah, blah, blah. And then I can say, well, okay, give me the ingredients. You give me the ingredients. And then I say, well, they're not the best. And then you say, why is that? Because those eggs that you use, my grandma used a different type of eggs and she used a different type of flour. So hers were better than yours, obviously. Even though I've never tasted yours yet, I'm going to be contrarian and argue the fact that yours aren't the best cookies because you didn't use these ingredients that somebody else I know used, which obviously, in my bias, makes them the best cookies. And I know that's a very amateur attempt at making an analogy, but it pretty much fits in all this because we have evidence. We have evidence. We have documents. We have judgment by the court. We have all these things. But yet, anybody who believes in the judicial system and law enforcement, in the law itself, doesn't know what they're talking about. Which is interesting to me. I have an individual in chat that used to be a corrections officer, and he can vouch to this. Whenever you're having anybody, whether they're in county or whether they're already in prison, inmates talk a lot. Inmates talk a lot. And I believe that sometimes they don't even know that you're listening to their conversations. All it would have taken was for Brian to be bragging to somebody about what he did, what he could potentially be getting away with, or trying to manipulate somebody into protecting him or, anything. It could be anything. Because once you're behind bars, it's a total different world. It is not this world that we live in out here. It's like the world is flipped upside down. It's the Twilight Zone. What is right is wrong, and what is wrong is right. So it's interesting to me whenever this individual is called to be a witness at his trial. We have to wonder, what did this? They call him a prison guard, but he's a corrections officer. They have different names in different states. We have to wonder, what information did he overhear? Because every information can be used against you before you go to trial. People don't understand that. So if you're sitting there blabbing and counting about evidence and all this other stuff, whoever's hearing it is going to tell it because that can be used against you. And people do not understand that. That's why a lot of people, they get locked up and instantly these other inmates, they want to get friendly with them to be able to get certain type of information that maybe can help their case. Well, I heard BK say that he threw the knife away at this point, blah, blah, blah. I heard him say he buried the shower curtain. I heard him say this. He told me he enjoyed stabbing that one girl, blah, blah, blah. Whatever it might have been. Even if it's not true, it's still going to be reported. It's still going to be reported. And that's interesting to me that they called a jail official to be testifying. Or even it could go the other way. If Brian is professing his innocence and this individual heard anything that could possibly shed reasonable doubt on the idea that he could have been the one. You know, it's very 50-50. And I can't wait to hear it. I can't wait to hear it. Because as much as people want to argue the facts that they've heard in these chat rooms over these 2.5 years as factual information, just because they like the creator or they think the creator's cute or whatever, or they have a crush on them or whatever, there's a lot of these creators, you look back on their background, and this might not mean anything to you, but we have individuals that are repo men. We have people that have worked in body shops. We have people that have done all kinds of stuff. But now all of a sudden they're document experts. They're experts in law. They're experts in all this stuff. But they've gone to court for their own defenses and they've lost every one but one. But their word is it's more meaningful than individuals that are higher up investigating this case. The investigators, the DNA specialists, the forensic people, all the individuals up the ladder that have investigated this case, and even the judge, they're incompetent in these people's eyes because their belief is that everybody's out to get somebody, which in essence tells you that they don't believe in anything good in their lives. Therefore, that's why they project such angst and miserable living, because they don't have a good life. They don't. You know what I mean? And I can't convince an adult to change their mindset. I can't. I'm not trying to. Like I've always told people, when I speak on things, I'm speaking in general, not to try to convince anybody. And if it does bring about ambivalence in you and you question it and it pisses you off, well, that should tell you something. Because normal people who talk to you shouldn't be able to piss you off and create ambivalence if you're certain in what you believe in. We have a lot of people trying to convince other people of their beliefs, but who's right, who's wrong? It's kind of like the Christianity argument. Is there a God? Is there not a God? Usually the atheist will argue that point, and the Christian will argue that point. But which one is really right? It's based on their belief. Me, if somebody's trying to tell me that they don't believe in God and God is fake and blah, 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 all this, I'll leave them right where they're at. That's your belief system, bro. That's your belief system. It's not my job to convince you. But you know what? At the end of my journey, I'd rather believe and be wrong than not believe. Well, how did that go? God. At the end of my journey, I would have rather believed and be wrong than not believed and needed to be right. You know what I'm saying? It's like people can be who they are. They're entitled to be who they are. Nobody should be able to tell you who you are, what you're about, or what you should believe, or what you should think, or even ridicule you for your beliefs or thoughts. I've been guilty of it. I've said it time and time again. But you know what? I got caught up in this whole YouTube genre where I was seeing people taking sides and I wanted to be a part of rather than apart from. Instead, I realized that it was better standing on my own than trying to fit into somebody else's narrative. You know? Because you have to ask yourself, if you're fighting so hard for this man's innocence, but you can't pay your own damn bills, you can't put gas in your gas tank, you can't bring food to the table, you don't have a place to live, you're living out by the river, you have all this stuff, and you're fighting so hard for this man's innocence, and you're not fighting that hard for your own existence, there's something wrong in that thought process. There really is. It's almost like saying, I want to be homeless, but I want to put every energy I got into maintaining that Brian is innocent just so that I can be amongst the masses that was right when the jury decision is made. If that brings you some kind of celebratory reward, then so be it. But the truth of the matter is, this trial is going to come and go. There's going to be a jury decision. There's going to be either an appeals or it's not going to be appealed. He's going to go to prison and wait. You know what I mean? There's going to be all these things that are going to happen to this man where you're lifting him up as an idol. And I see your comment about the Christian analogy. People would rather be homeless and without utilities and everything else and try to bring other people down for an individual that they don't even know. Chick Bay, do you know Bryan Kohberger? Are you his family member? Are you an individual that has walked in his shoes? Is that your identification? What is it? Because I'd rather hear that aspect than for somebody just to sit there and talk about how they wish that a person who's accused of killing 4 people should go free. Because where's the justice for those 4 people that died? If this guy didn't do it, and none of the people on that side have the opportunity to show a directive other than Pavarotti, he's pieced a lot of different things together. At least he's tried to put people together, even though it's not plausible most of the time. At least he's tried to give you narratives. Most other people don't even go that far. They just tell you that Brian's innocent because this has been corrupted, this has been done this way, this has been done that way. But we have factual documents and testimonies and court decisions to state otherwise. You get what I'm saying? Yeah, I mean, I don't know this guy. So for me to sit here and say that I wish that he's innocent or guilty would be foolish. And I've never really wished any one way or the other. I say that he's guilty because the evidence and everything that I read point that direction. I'm not going to be on that jury. So my opinion, a quarter and a cup of coffee and see where that gets you. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not fanatical about it. I don't go into chats to start fights with people. I don't go into fight to discern my opinion about my belief about him being guilty. I don't. Because it doesn't matter to me. You know what matters to me? My family, my job, my advancement in life, my bills, having food on my table, being a better human, being understanding for those in need. And this individual has plenty of people that are in his corner trying to defend his life. The prosecution has their attorney. They don't need me on their side. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just saying that, you know, I mean, and I'm not saying that to be ugly. I'm really not. I'm not saying that to be ugly at all. I know there's a lot of people that have worked their way from the bottom to the top. But to hear individuals talk about those type of individuals as well, that their degrees don't mean anything, or that education doesn't mean anything, or, people that have actually done this for a living, they're stupid and incompetent. But here they have nothing more than a YouTube platform to sit there and down other people who have worked their butt off for the position in life that they're at. That is disrespectful as crap. It really is. You get what I'm saying? It really is. And that's why you can come in this chat and you can say that you agree with what I say or disagree. That's fine. I don't know you. I don't know any of you. But I respect you. But the point of the matter is, it doesn't make me better or less than you for me being on this panel saying what I want to say. You get what I'm saying? My thoughts, my beliefs are my own. Why do people get so mad when somebody doesn't agree with what they got to say? I wasn't talking about you, Chickbait. I was talking about the people that beg for money because they can't pay their bills, but yet they're on these streams 24/7. Make your money how you need to make it. But don't go attacking people that don't beg for money and are at a better level in life than you are. I think it's more about envy and jealousy than anything else. But most of the time, people don't understand the hard work it takes to get to a position in life where you're stable. For those of you that know my history, I've been a drug addict, alcoholic for a multitude of my life, where I was nothing to myself. I was self-destructive, all these other things. And I worked myself out of that. I worked myself at dead-end jobs, not knowing where I was going to sleep, barely making it with bills and everything else, and I still didn't rely on anybody else but myself. Donated plasma, did all kinds of crap to be able to make money, trying to overcome an addiction. Somehow I made it through college, got me a licensure, got me a degree, started working, still struggling because that degree wasn't bringing in a lot of money. And whenever, that's why I get offensive when people say that education doesn't matter. When education doesn't matter. Because that comes from people that obviously don't care enough to be educated. They want to stick to Googling everything or Wikipedia and everything, or listening to other people who are identical to their belief pattern. That's a cult. I'm open-minded to an extreme, When you start talking about UFOs and stuff coming out of the sky and all this other stuff, if I don't see it, I don't believe it. Do you get what I'm saying? So that's where I'm at on all that. And I didn't mean to take up your time this morning on a rant, because I'm really not ranting at anybody. I'm just ranting on the fact that, there's a lot of ugliness into this case, and for what? I would expect the families to be going harder than some of these YouTubers. I really would. I know if it was my loved one that got killed and they had this guy in custody, I'd be hardcore every day to keep my family member's memory alive. And if somebody had something to say about it, who are they? What are they? It wasn't their family member that got killed. I've had a family member get murdered Was the fact that he was a drug addict struggling, did that make it okay? No, it didn't. You know? So all this mess that gets slung around every day, people are still mad because the continuance wasn't issued. People are mad because the alternative perps weren't accepted, that the judge is biased and all this other stuff. Well, go read a book. Go understand it. Go get you some sense of understanding. The more knowledge you get, the less bias you have in life. And you might not agree with me, but I was raised from an era where right is right, wrong is wrong. And gray is very seldom. And whether you believe in that, whether that causes some subs, I'm sorry for that. But right is right and wrong is wrong. And those that obviously go to jail and have a long list of procedures that keep them in jail, it tells me more often than not that they deserve to be there. Now I'm waiting for the next avenue, which is the jury trial, to see if I was wrong or if I was right in my conviction. And I'll be the first to come on here and say, well, you know what? I'm glad that they got justice one way or the other. I hope the families find, if he is innocent, the families find who did it. But I'm just sick of all this other BS that gets thrown around and gets slammed in our faces like we're supposed to swallow something just because these people say it. You know what I mean? So that's my stance on that. And I can tell you that most people that have ever slandered me on here don't really know who I am. The person that I just described to you, the hard-working person that overcomes obstacles and doesn't ever say no and doesn't quit and doesn't let the status quo be my measuring stick, that is the person who I am. I'm the person who goes above and beyond. I'm very loyal and I'm very honest. But that doesn't go well on these YouTube streets. See, I created some ambivalence, and people will keep talking about this from here on out. There's always a method to my madness. You understand, I'm a therapist. That's one thing people don't ever understand. Who's speaking right now? Is it the therapist or is it 12? That's why you'll never really understand who I am. Because I'm one and the same. And many people can't understand that. I've worked with criminals my whole career. That's why it makes people mad. Because I've made criminals mad my whole career. Because they can't get over on me. They can't do anything but name call and threaten and all this and that and the other. But I'm okay with that. I'm good, Salty. Thank you for being here. I'm just mostly just talking right now. You know? I'm mostly just talking. But just to be fair, there are shelters, there are places to help you pay your bills. There are outlets out there to help you get what you need, food, shelter, clothing. If that's what you truly need and you're not grifting, go find one of these places in your town and get what you need. YouTube is not going to supply your needs forever. You know, go find something that's able to help you through your tough times. You know? So I hope that I didn't run y'all off when I start to rant because I am very long-winded. That's the therapist in me. And I hope y'all have a wonderful Saturday, a wonderful weekend, and take care of yourself and your families and the stuff that really matters. Because Mr. Koberger is either going to be innocent or guilty. We do enjoy talking about it. Obviously, I do because I talk a lot about it. But I hope that you enjoy the way that I do talk about it. And for now, the maestro is going to cue that music. Y'all have a beautiful day.